the stillness, the presence, whatever we want to call it. And by sensing it in yourself and being it, then you recognize it in another. And that recognition that in the space of stillness is true love, which doesn't need the other, because the other only reflects to you who you are. So the question you're basically asking, would you then love everybody equally, so there would not be one person singled out as special, as the Course in Miracles calls it special relationship, which the Course in Miracles says, of course, it's of the ego, to single one out as special. Now, if you single one out as special and what you see in the other is the form only, and you're attached to the form, which doesn't just mean the physical form. Of course, that's an important part of it, because that is part of the sexuality and all that, which is part of the attraction. But it also includes the psychological form of the other, who you think that person is, their psychological makeup, how they behave and speak and act. That is also form, that's the psychological form. And there can be strong attachment to those aspects. Both the physical come together with the psychological, which includes also emotions. There's an emotional link also there. And those when they all come together, you fall in love. And aptly, it's called fall because it's a fall in consciousness. But that's okay. If that's what you experience, then that life wants you to experience that. It's part of your learning, that fall in consciousness. Now, it's not immediately, of course, experienced as a fall. It's experienced as a high. And only afterwards do you realize, oh, that was a fall. And afterwards can be after a year. It can be after 3 months. It can be after the honeymoon. It can be soon after you move in together. And then the suffering starts. What before was the love now becomes the suffering. And then for a while it can happen that you fluctuate for the next year or 2 or 3 between still feeling the love and the suffering, and then usually it comes to an end after a while, or you compromise and for some other reason stay together. So that's now if you are able to feel in the other, well, first of all in yourself, that which is beyond form, the essence, the stillness, the presence, whatever we want to call it. And by sensing it in yourself and being it, then you recognize it in another. And that recognition that in the space of stillness is true love, which doesn't need the other, because the other only reflects to you who you are. But even there it can happen that the form of the other, because you are not just the formless, temporarily you are also the form. Temporarily you are either a man or a woman. Temporarily you have this body. And this form, this man or this woman, and this body and the emotional field may find a certain resonance with, on different levels, be it sexual, emotional, psychological levels, a certain resonance with the other form. And that resonance, that is what in the unenlightened romantic love makes up the entire relationship. But now, when you know who you are in your essence, all those factors are still there, but they do not make up the entire relationship. Beyond the resonance between the sexual or emotional or physical resonance, there's a deeper level present. So you can go through the motions of romantic love with the transcendent level also present in yourself and recognizing it in the other. So romantic love may, after a while, of course, for the relationship to be truly deep in any relationship, some transcendent element has to be there, because it's not going to last otherwise. It doesn't mean necessarily that people need to be totally awake already, totally awake, knowing who they are, but some element of the formless must be there eventually in the relationship for the relationship to survive and be a true relationship. Otherwise, all you have left in the relationship is your judgments about the other and physical attraction and just mind emotional. And that's ultimately is not enough. It's not enough. The added element, the transcendent element, needs to be there. And if the transcendent is there, you can be quite content even without the romantic relationship. You no longer say, I need that. It's when it's there, it's beautiful, but you don't need that.
A conscious conversation is basically a conversation where, at least between two people, each person is not identified with their viewpoint, their perspective, their mental position. They put forward their perspective, their positions, their viewpoints without any sense of self in it, because they don't need that, because their sense of self is derived from the presence that they can sense throughout the conversation in the background of their being. And then they can play with concepts, they can play with opinions, they can play with words, they can play with arguments even. This is my argument is this, and then the other person, well, and mine is that. There's the famous saying, we agree to disagree, or something like that. That sounds relatively conscious, because if you at least you're not identified with your positions, then you say that's fine, we agree, that's okay, it's interesting. Self-identification with mental positions is the unconsciousness, because then you'll be defending your mental positions, but you're really defending your sense of self. And this is why these conversations can easily and very quickly become very unpleasant. They are unconscious. So in unconscious conversation, and with very unconscious people, can even happen. I mean, you can probably read about it in the papers all the time. They get so defensive and aggressive about their respective mental positions, they start physically attacking each other. It even happens sometimes. You can see it in certain parliaments in some places, and suddenly all these members of parliament start attacking each other. Washington sometimes gets close, but it probably hasn't quite happened that way. It could happen there too. Who knows?
Okay, so if you love everybody unconditionally, how can you possibly decide who is going to be your partner? That's the question. Because it seems then there's no preference anymore. Or if it's physical attraction, isn't there a contradiction? If you're in a higher state of consciousness, then shouldn't or not be physically attracted to anybody? Is that the implication, the question? Well, the love we're talking about, the unconditional love towards human beings and life forms, is see, what is it that you love in the other when you love unconditionally? You don't love their physical form, you don't love their psychological form, their personality. The unconditional love goes deeper. It's a transcendent love, that what you love is not the form, but the formless essence of the other. And you can only love that when you can sense within yourself that dimension, the formless. When you can be still and present enough, and then look at another human being, and then you can recognize something. What you recognize is, for lack of a better word, the consciousness, which is the essence of the other human, as it is the essence of who you are. Consciousness prior to the consciousness being born into some kind of form, personality, which is there, and the physical form, which is there. But in every being, there is still the dimension of consciousness that is prior to form. Although the human being has become form, consciousness has assumed form, has incarnated, so to speak. But that doesn't mean that the formless and timeless consciousness is lost. It's still there as the essence. And when you can sense it in yourself, you can sense it because you're still and present enough. From that dimension in yourself, you can sense it in the other, and that is love. It's basically a recognition that in essence the other is the same as you. But then, of course, there's always, that is the transcendent dimension to every human being. In addition to that transcendent dimension, there is a form identity of every human being. Every human being has a physical form and an emotional form and a mental form. That's the inner, that's the personality. So the physical appearance and the personality consisting of mental, emotional conditioning and so on. So there are the two levels. The unconditional love towards all humans is the transcendent love. You love the formless, you recognize the formless as yourself in the other. But then you are still here as a form too, and the form may respond to another form. The physical, there can be physical attraction. It is not incompatible with the transcendent realization, although some ancient or not so ancient traditions may tell you that. It is not incompatible. You can have physical attraction on the level of form. You can also have an attraction towards the mental, emotional form of that other human being because it resonates with something in your own form. So that means you may be drawn to another human being physically or mentally, emotionally, because you resonate with that. And then perhaps you enter into a relationship. So that different levels operate. The transcendent remains. It can become obscured through excessive attachment, of course, to the mental or emotional dimension in the other. So in a relationship, the realization of essence identity, as I sometimes call it, can become obscured when form identity takes over completely, which could happen through the pain body, which could happen through emotional, getting identified with arising emotions and losing touch with the transcendent. Yes, that can happen, but it's not incompatible. Everybody's challenge is to balance the two in their lives, in their relationships, to relate to the other on the transcendent level, and at the same time, if it's there, on an emotional, mental, physical level.